Okay, good evening, folks, and welcome to another edition of the Sydney Saxophone Network Q&A sessions. I hope you've all been well, and a special shout out to our friends from Victoria in Melbourne. Hopefully you've survived the snap lockdown in recent days. Also looking forward to coming down there in a couple of weeks with the Nexus Quartet. A bit of a shameless plug, sorry, I know, but if you are there, we'll be performing at the Melbourne Recital Centre on March the 16th, and I think there's a few tickets still available, so it'd be good to see you there if you are around. Anyway, I digress. Today is one of the special edition versions of our Q&A sessions where we venture beyond the borders of New South Wales and Sydney and go across country. Tonight we're joined by a very esteemed colleague and special guest who is, what can I say about this guy? He's a phenomenal player. We're crossing over to Western Australia to be talking to Dr. Matthew Stiles. Now, Dr. Stiles is quite an incredible musician and educator and researcher. He's done so many various performances and in various genres as well. Like he's such a versatile musician, having worked with the likes of people such as Ben Folds, Diana Ross, Dave Weckl, Tim Minchin, Olivia Newton-John, Manhattan Transfer. He's also performed with a lot of esteemed orchestras such as the Western Australian Symphony, Tassie Symphony, but across the pond to Malaysia and the Singapore Symphony Orchestras. He's also had several commissions. He's a composer as well, like just, all around just so super busy doing a whole bunch of different things. And he's also, on top of that, the saxophone teacher at WAPA, the Western Australia. You have to correct me here, Matt, because I can't actually quite remember the title.
Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts.
Thank you very much, because I knew I'd stuff that up. But as I said, like he's just so prolific in what he does with the saxophone and beyond. So tonight, I'd like to extend a special welcome to Dr. Stiles.
Thank you, Nathan. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for asking me. You've interviewed some incredible sax players, pedagogues, teachers, composers, so I consider myself very honoured and very lucky to be in that list, so thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
No worries, thank you. I have been trying to get a hold of you for some time, but it's very nice to actually be able to lock in the schedule that works for both of us, so very excited for tonight.
Absolutely.
So we're going to kick it off with an easy one. We're going to probably talk a bit about what made you pick the saxophone.
Well, for me to talk about that, I have to talk about my deep, dark past as a flute player.
Oh, please do.
Yes, I know. And I started playing flute in the in primary school, and before that, clarinet and piano. And I got a scholarship to Perth Mod, one of the music schools here, on flute. And for the first 3 years, it was great. And in year 10, they needed more sax players. And at the time, my brother, Simon Stiles, was the sax teacher. Now, Simon is a wonderful player and teacher. He also plays across the styles, across the genres. And while it may sound weird, it actually worked really well. I'd always hear him play saxophone, and I love the sound of it. And so I put my hand up to start. So in I think it was year 10, started playing the saxophone, and I played it because I loved it, and I loved the sound of it. I have a feeling also I probably wanted to get a girlfriend, and flute wasn't helping. But it was just this sound that I just loved, and the fact that to my ears this instrument could go anywhere. And so for me it was a really easy choice. Very, very easy choice to go on to saxophone. I was offered, the choice, and I don't think I even hesitated and said absolutely. And I didn't stop playing flute. I ended up doing both, but I was so glad I took up saxophone.
Oh, nice. Well, I was going to ask if you did play any other instruments, because I did recall that flute was where it all began for you. So I think we cover that. So thank you very much. But maybe you could tell us a bit about your student days on saxophone. So obviously we talked about, how you got started and, sort of what was the catalyst for you to sort of pick up such a wonderful instrument. Maybe talk us through your journey as a student and the years sort of leading up to your path from there to, your playing career as a professional musician.
Yeah, sure. Look, as I said, my brother was my teacher through high school. When I got to uni, I auditioned on both flute and saxophone, and at the two institutions here. And the con, as it was then, said, "Yep, we'll take you on both." And the other one, UWA, said, "Yeah, we'll take you on flute, and not both." For I'm not sure why reasons, maybe tradition, maybe because it was a better known and old university, I ended up doing flute at UWA. All the time I was playing flute, though, I was always playing saxophone. It was never something that stopped. I couldn't stop it, and I know it affected my flute. Not my flute career. What do you call it? My progress on flute. There was always something that, some part of the tone that I wasn't quite pure enough, because my embouchure, of course, was changing for saxophone. So I did the first 3 years of my undergrad, and then in my fourth year, my honours year, I went to the head of Winds, Peter Moore at the time, and I said to him, "Can I change to saxophone?" And I think his response was something like, "Well, what took you so long?" Because he knew I'd always do it. He knew I'd always been playing saxophone, and I love playing saxophone. But I just persisted, and I'm glad I did, because I got to learn for some amazing repertoire from Neil Fissenden, the principal flute of Wausau at the time, and learnt so much about music. But there was always something missing, and so in my fourth year, I then learnt from Tom Martin, who was also here and was in the army band. I think I know he's now living in Melbourne. And it was a great year. It was a big year because I had to essentially try and assimilate 4 years into one, which was very, very silly. I don't recommend anyone do that, but he's a very straight teacher. And so he put me on this very strict diet of just getting everything in tone, all my technique, all my sound. And so after that, I knew there was more I wanted to learn and more I needed to learn. So that's when I went then over to the UK. So I taught for about 4 years and played as much as I could in everything I could. I was lucky enough to get the principal casual saxophone job at the end of my fourth year. That, and credit to my teacher for just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and to Peter Moore, who coached me through that. But I knew there was more. I knew there was far, far more I needed to learn. And so I went over to the Royal College in London and started lessons with the enormously wonderful Carl Horch, who is brilliant. And I learnt from him for a short time. And what he realized was that I wasn't the typical classical only saxophone player, and that's I hope that doesn't sound condescending anyway, because that's not what I mean. I was always looking broader than being able to specialize in one area. And so, being the wonderful teacher and human being that he is, he said, "Look, I think you need to go to a different teacher who has a different view on things. I'm going to send you to Martin Robertson, who was brilliant. He's the sort of guy who calls a spade a shovel. And I certainly got shoveled quite a few times in my lessons, which is exactly what I needed. It was really, really, really what I needed. And between those two and my work at the Royal College, I really started to, I suppose, find my feet as a player and get really interested in the whole nexus between education and performance as well. And when I was in London, because of course when you're in London, you're pre-COVID times. I feel so old now. Before COVID came along,
Yeah.
there were, amazing gigs that, of course, every night. And I had a membership to Ronnie's and went to the 606 and the 100 Club and all the rest of it all the time. And interestingly, it's very timely because I went and saw a couple of tours of Chick Corea.
Oh, wow.
And it was phenomenal. It was just, I remember seeing the Three Quartets tour, and you had James Genus, Gary Novak, Chick Corea, and Bob Berg playing.
Wow.
And it was just eye-opening. And I saw them at I think it was the Queen Elizabeth Hall on South Bank. And then they came back a few months later and did a season at Ronnie Scott's.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I've got to go and talk to Bob Berg because I love his playing. And so, of course I was sweating and, clammy palms and, hello, sir, and all the rest of it. He was just up at the bar in the days when you could smoke in a pub with his cigars.
Nice.
And just hanging at the bar. And so I went up to him and said, of course, the usual, I love your playing. Of course I do.
Yep.
Oh, but let's get talking. And I said, look, I'd love to have get some help from you, get some lessons from you. And so he pulls out this card, writes down this number, and he says, right, when you're in New York. I said, well, okay, I can be there in 4 minutes if you want me to. I'll be, when are you in New York? So he told me. Anyway, so we hooked up a time, and I stayed with a friend of mine, and we met in this, how can I describe it? It was a friend of his penthouse apartment on Fifth Avenue. And it was very surreal experiences, when I'm sort of walking into this Australian boy on Fifth Avenue looking at this apartment building, seeing the penthouse, think, oh, I'm way out of my league. I'm way out of my league anyway, playing for Bob Berg. And went up to and had some lessons with him, and it was just eye-opening because it was, we talked about sound, and we talked about freedom, and we talked about interpretation, and the great thing with all those mix of people is that no one was contradicting anyone else. That there was always a way that you could draw the line very clearly between all of them. And there was never a point where I always felt torn because I thought I'd love to spend all my time on this or all my time on that. And so there was that kind of push and pull. But I never felt that they were saying you must do one. And all of their advice was such that it was about the sax, and it was about playing, it was about music. So I was really very, very fortunate to have, those experiences. The only other experience that was pre-London was learning from the great Don Burrows.
Oh, wow. Which
was just so good because it was a lesson in life, and he picked me up from the Manly Ferry terminal and drive me through to his place on Church Point, and he talked photography. He talked about surf lifesaving days. He talked about his work with George Goller and all this sort of stuff. And interestingly, we didn't touch the saxophone. It was all flute.
Right.
But the thing that I learned from him, I know I'm rambling here.
No, it's all good.
The thing I learned from him was I'd start to play something. We just sat down and he said, oh, we're going to play Stella by Starlight. Mm-hmm. I said, okay. He says, I'll just play guide tones, a bit of a bass line, and, you play the tune. So I started playing. We got through the head once and he stopped and he said, why? He said, you've had classical training and you're, because I was currently still at the university at this point, you're still having classical training. I said, yeah. He said, why are you changing your approach and your tone so much? He said, if you play the flute or an instrument like this, then play it like that. If you happen to be playing jazz, then you put jazz into that. And I mean, that's one of those,
light
kind of
bulb
moments. Yeah, absolutely. It was like a bombshell. It's like, I thought I had to do this and this, and I'd play like this, and I'd do this, and it's like, no. So, all of those experiences up until that point all I think, just affirmed my love for everything. And like I say, it didn't really go against any advice from everyone, which looking back now, I was very surprised, but so grateful.
Wow. Okay. And it's like some remarkable experiences there, as you say. Slightly jealous, but no, that's really now, I just want to talk about a little bit more about your studies. In 2004, you received a Churchill Fellowship, and this allowed you to pursue further studies overseas with some incredible players. Can you tell us a little bit about what the fellowship was for, and who the people that you ended up studying with as a result of this?
Churchill Fellowship, for anyone who is who's got some time in their career, and they've got some experience under their belt, and they've got a project or something different they want to pursue, I can thoroughly recommend the Churchill Fellowship grant. It is amazing. They're an incredible foundation. They're incredibly generous, and they just want to support people who are passionate about what they do. So I was very fortunate, because it's a national and international foundation, and of course you're competing against a lot of other people to get these things. So I was incredibly fortunate to get it, and I'm very, very humbled and grateful that I got it. What it was an idea that I wanted to try, and all the things that I've talked about so far, I wanted to try and find a way where I could truly combine it. So the title was something ridiculous like cross-genre pedagogical methodology, something, which when they read out the award at the governor's house, they couldn't say it, and they turned when I went and shook their hand, they said, "I'm going to kill you next time. Can you do something a bit simpler?" Essentially, I wanted to go and learn more, and continue to learn how to bring these things together. So what it started off being, and I was very fortunate because it's such a generous grant that my wife was able to travel with me, which was just fantastic. And we started off, we did the sort of the round the world thing. Started off in Paris, where I met up with some saxophone colleagues in the Garde Républicaine. Then I went across to London and met up again with some of my old colleagues at the Royal College. But then, pretty soon it started, the official grant. And so it started with attending a conference, the IAJE, that was then the International Association of Jazz Educators.
Okay.
And had a conference in New York. And of course, this is when the association was going, it would bring together, the best of the best of the best. And I happened to know that one of the feature artists at this was Michael Brecker.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, another one of these very nerve-wracking, nervous, hello, why am I? And I got in touch with his agent beforehand, and I thought, look, I know I'm really pushing my luck here. And of course I was. The agent never got back to me, and I can understand. They must get so many requests. But there was a CD signing. He just released his Quindectet album. And there's a CD signing. So I got in the line. I felt like I was all of 15 years old, and, I was, of course. And and went and met him and had a chat, and it was quite amazing talking to him, because Michael Brecker was powerhouse, just a technical master, and his playing is just so powerful. And when he talked to him, he was like, "Hello, Matthew. Oh yeah, okay, great. You've made it to New York." And you go, hang on. You pick up this thing. You destroy most buildings with your sound, and yet there's this real gentle spirit. Wow. Which was almost enough of a lesson in a way. And then I got to see him play at Birdland and a few other places. Anyway, then from then on in, it was down to Indiana University, Bloomington, to spend some very intense time with the wonderful Otis Murphy. And it was great because I was clearly older than, his undergrad students, but about the same age as his doctoral students. And I was considering doing my doctorate at the time. Anyway, he kind of took me under his wing, and so I spent every day in his studio either playing with him, playing to him, or watching him teach for months. And just learning from him about his approach, his tone, his resonance, his beauty, the beauty of the single note. And also taking some lessons off Tom Walsh as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom is great because he gets it. He really gets the crossover stuff.
Yeah.
While he's head of jazz and now head of the whole department, I think.
Wow.
I think, apologies if I got that wrong, but no, I think that's right. Anyway, he's a powerhouse person too. And he did a recording of Don Freund's Skyscrapings. Mm-hmm. Which of course is this essentially classical piece, but with jazz leanings.
Yeah.
And it's a great piece. I think it's about 5 movements, and I got to turn pages for the recording. And so seeing the head of jazz and someone who'd also learnt off Rousseau, which we'll get to in a second, but understood that the medium between the two, or the meeting point between the two, was just phenomenal part of it. So if you're ever hearing the recording and you hear, it's me and I'm sorry. I don't think I did that, but anyway. So I was there for a while, and that was just an amazing experience, and a lot of things where Otis would say, okay, in his very patient manner. So, how would you do this? And okay, play this altissimo thing for me, and I play it. I love it. Just look at me and go, no, Matthew. Okay, yeah, I know. That's why I'm here. All these rough edges. And so after that, I felt like I was ready for the next stage, which was go and spend some time with Dr. Rousseau. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Minnesota, and University of Minneapolis, and again I just spent day upon week upon week just sitting in his studio, playing for him, playing with him, watching him teach. And I still got the recordings somewhere in an old mini disc. Remember those?
Yeah.
And every time I listen to them, I just think, oh man, I've forgotten that. Oh yeah, okay. It was an incredible thing. And the one bit of advice that I remember he gave me, and I know one of my old students, Jono, is here. Hi, Jono. You'll hear me say this again, and I apologise for saying this for the 43rd time, is if it adds to the music, then do it. And for me, it's like, it wasn't by any means the final door that was open, but it was a cathedral-sized door. It just went, right. So I can do that, and I can try that, and I can, whether it's finger position, whether it's tongue, whether it's you're voicing in a certain way, whatever it is, it just opened everything up. And from that point, it's one of those points where while I felt like I'd learned a lot, I also realized, man, there's so much I just still don't know. But yeah, I'm very, very fortunate. And then by that point, I needed to come home and practice.
Back to woodshedding, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. Okay. Now, again, another phenomenal experience. Again, slightly jealous again, but no, it's amazing. Now, you may have answered this question already, but if not, is there a particular lesson or maybe a masterclass or some sort of a moment of mentorship that you've had that really sticks out in your mind as being memorable? And if so, what made it memorable? I love your questions, Nathan. They're really cool. But you get to the harder stuff. Oh, you wait.
Which wine do I drink? Well, the real stuff. Hi, Niels.
Hey, Niels.
So one of the big things I remember going back to when my brother was teaching me, mm-hmm. and I remember the first time he said to try jazz, and he put on a play along. We were in the lounge room at my family home, and I think I was still on flute at the time, and he had his, I think he was on alto, and he said, "Okay, I'm not going to give you anything. I'm not going to give you any notes. I'm not going to give you any key. I'm not going to give you anything. I just want you to play what you hear, listen and respond." Now I'd heard him improvise, for many years. Hadn't done much of it myself. And I remember, again, this idea of playing, a few notes there that were very interesting. But, as some people say, you just keep playing a chromatic scale till you find the right note and just stay there. And I started playing and thought, wow, I can play anything. And again, it's, we've talked about freeing moments.
Yeah.
And this was one of these freeing moments that didn't matter about that I was just learning classical at the time and nothing about jazz. It was just this freedom. It was this open door. And I will always remember that as one of the very pivotal moments. At other times, I remember a lesson with Martin Robertson, and we were doing Tommy Smith Sonata.
Okay.
And it was very new then. Camden Music had only just released it. And again, it's one of these because it's Tommy Smith, it's been written by someone who's a very, very heavily bebop influenced player. But, there's these elements of Prokofiev in there and this neo-romantic ideals and all this sort of thing. So it's a real cross-genre thing. And I play something and he said, "Why did you play it like that?" And of course my answer was, "Well, because I think that's what you wanted me to play," kind of thing. And he said, "Well, no, why did you play it like that?" He says, "It wasn't me." He said, "What?" I said, "I don't actually know." He says, "Okay, I want you to play it back to me 5 different times." And I thought, okay, 5 different times. And I didn't, and I knew at this point he was just trusting me to use my brains and just go for something. So I tried 5 different approaches. Of course, 4.5 of them were pure adulterated rubbish. I got the end of the 5th one and I went, "I think I know what you're getting at." And he's just sitting, it's one of the sort of the wise teacher. Sitting back, yeah. And I said, so we went phrase by phrase and suddenly, again, it was like this open door. I suppose the other one of the other ideas is something that I've already alluded to, when that Rousseau's advice to me was, if it adds to the music, then do it. But the other point was when Otis Murphy first played to me, when I was here to, 2 feet away. Oh, that's how you resonate. He's one of the, there are some, I'm not putting any other player down in the world, but for me, he's someone who has such resonance that he will feel everything, even if it's bat squeak, quadruple P, and you won't miss anything from him going to there to roaringly loud, and nothing about you will shirk away from the sound or think that's raw. Everything is just this gradation of resonance that doesn't change at any point. And that has stuck with me ever since. And any time I need to think of something just to sort of center myself, mainly on alto and soprano, I suppose, more than the other ones, that moment, that sound, which I'm sure I've got on mini disc, but I'm sure my microphone would have just melted and exploded with the pure amount of partials coming through. Wow. That's something I will always remember, that physical sensation, and every single hair, of which I've lost most of them by now, was standing on end. It's just goosebumps on my goosebumps. Think, okay, right, all right. You've just again opened a door to something else. So.
Wow, no, really cool stuff.
Mm.
Now, moving along to about yourself in terms of some of your musical influences. Now, you have sort of dropped a few names along the way tonight, as we've discussed.
Name dropping. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, but just in terms of like people that have really inspired you, or
Yep.
players that you've listened to. Maybe if you haven't, if there's some additional ones you'd like to add, why do they resonate with you, and what is it about them that is, I guess, the influencing factor for you in terms of is helping establish what you do, I guess.
Yeah. I think, well, this is kind of where I go, sort of start at saxophone and then go right outside of it. Of course, you can't help but go to the masters. You hear Marcel Mule play, a recording of something like the Iber, and it's just, it's effortless, absolutely effortless. Or any of Londex's recordings, it's just, again, just effortless. And that's what I take from those ones. From the more contemporary players, someone like Rob Buckland, I think, has a wonderful approach to sound, because he does crossover, and he's been someone that has, I suppose, has helped me affirm what I'm doing now, in a way, I suppose, because I see that the Royal Northern and what I do, I have an affinity with. So between Rob, actually the whole Apollo quartet, between Rob and Andy Scott, of course, they've those two people have really inspired me and affirmed what I do, and influenced a lot of things, including writing and composition and so forth. Outside of that, Tim Garland, just, wonderful. And it's interesting because Tim Garland has that connection with Andy and Rob as well, and Simon Haram and so forth. And Tim Garland, I love what he does. It's just gorgeous. And what he does with Gwilym Simcock, breathtaking, And again, speaking of whom, Gwilym Simcock, anything by Gwilym Simcock. And for those of you who haven't come across him, he's currently the piano player for Pat Metheny, has got a wealth of credits behind his name. And when he plays, it's just music. While it's more perhaps jazz, it's just music. It's just phenomenal. Steve Gadd.
Yep.
Drummer extraordinaire, just his feel, his time, and it's uncluttered. It's clean. And again, I suppose if I think about it, he's, everything from Joni Mitchell through to playing with Sting, to playing with everyone else in the universe. And it's just so beautiful, because I think I would love people who've never delved into the world of jazz or funk or folk or anything like that, just kept classical, to have a listen to that and just to get that wait for the beat feel to fill up that, the time between there and there. I think he's just, incredible. Max Richter, just in his reimagination of works recently is just beautiful and just so human. And I think one of my big influences as a musician is Martha Argerich, the incredible concert pianist, who I remember hearing her play the Ravel piano concerto. I was recording with the I think it was the National Orchestra of France, and it's about a 1990 recording. And it was great because you have the French orchestra playing very French, and every phrase is so big, and the big gestures wonderful, and then Martha Argerich is doing, it's just this your senses are on overload, and the way she's able to phrase things. And I think a lot of piano players, we can learn a lot from them, because there's, they do literally spend 8, 9, 10 hours practicing by themselves. I feel sorry for them. I'd love that. Wouldn't that be wonderful to have that much time to practice?
I know.
wow. But, learning from that side of things where there's so much complexity in what they do and they're able to get right in the middle of it and make it simple and make, something that takes 10 fingers sounds like there is one, and you can hear the hierarchy from 1 to 10, and the clarity is just beautiful. So, yeah, that, and of course Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, because it's a great party band.
Of course, and those horn lines are quite memorable. Oh, very nice. So definitely a mixed bag of sources of inspiration, but it's quite understandable considering the depth and broadness of the things you do. So yeah, wow. Yeah, I've made a list of a couple of people I'm going to check out later after this. Now, gigs. Now, I've got like 2 pages worth of gigs that I found on the internet that you've done. And...
Don't believe anything you read on the internet. If it was on Twitter, they've banned me. Oh, no, that was Trump. That's right.
Yeah. Well, I tried to find it on Facebook, but all the news is deleted. But anyway. Sorry, too soon. Like as I said at the start, you've worked with some incredible musicians in a broad spectrum of styles and genres and performance mediums as well. So soloist in jazz combos, orchestras, of course, chamber ensembles. There's so many to mention, but I just wanted to ask you, what are a couple of standout, memorable performances for you or experiences? And what was it about those experiences that made it memorable? Was it the process working towards it, the repertoire, the musicians you worked with? I know it's a tough one.
Yeah, look, it is a tough one. And that I just start by saying I'm just really fortunate. I've wanted to do as much as possible, and I want to still do as much as possible, where and everywhere possible. And I've just been very, very fortunate to be able to have the opportunities. And of course, if you're given them, you have to say yes and just go and milk them. As you know. Look, I think one of the things, harkening back to when I was in London, one of the things that I was exposed to, I suppose, is the music of Mark Anthony Turnage. And I was exposed to that because Martin Robertson, my teacher then, was Mark Anthony Turnage's preferred saxophone player.
Yeah, he's the guy that recorded. I think he did an album completely of Turnage's music. Yeah. Yeah,
and pretty much most things that Turnage has written for solo sax, Martin has ended up doing. And so I remember Martin talking to me about this gig that he was doing. This is in '96, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing this gig. Mark Anthony, to his mates, has written this piece, and it's for a chamber orchestra and a jazz trio." I went, "Oh, that sounds cool." And he says, "Yeah." He says, "I'm absolutely beeping myself because in the trio of which Martin was playing is Peter Erskine and John Schofield."
Oh, wow.
Which is what I said, except I use his words, and since we're recording, I won't use those words.
Fair enough.
Yeah. "Oh dear," I said. "Oh boy, jolly good. Well done, chappie." No, I didn't say that. And he said, "Oh, look, I'll get you a ticket and come along and see this thing." So I went and saw the world premiere of Blood on the Floor. And it, again, one of these moments. And so after this, I started to think, okay, I need to meet Mark Anthony. I need to find out more about it. And so, I got really, really interested in it. And of course, I ended up doing my doctorate, which is a lot about Turnage. So a few years back, fast forwarding, Evan Kenya, the artistic director of WASO, rang me, and he and I actually went to school together at Perth Mod, and then uni together, and then we ended up studying in London at the same time as well.
Oh, wow.
And he was learning from Louis Andriessen when he went across to The Hague, and anyway, so we've kind of been doing this, and he knew my love for Turnage, and he rang me up and he said, "Do you want to play a Turnage piece?" So I, slam down the phone and just drive to Wasco at this point. I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, well, look, I think we've been able to get all the pieces moving for you to do Hidden Love Song, which is this very cool piece for solo, soprano, and orchestra." And I just thought this is like, because I get Turnage's music. I feel like it's really, I understand it. It's almost intuitive to me in a way. Some people just don't like it, and that's fine. Nothing against that for a second. For me, it is one of those absolute meeting points of so many genres of music. And so, a few years back, it was Balder Bronneman and conducting, and we did this live recording and performance of Hidden Love Song with Wasso, and it was just, to play anything with a symphony orchestra is wonderful. I could die now. Wonderful. I'm done. But to play something that meant so much to me, or a composer that meant so much to me, was just wonderful. And Turnage came over just the next year, and I told him about this gig, and that's fine. He was at Evan's place, and and Evan invited me over. Whenever I walked in, and I shook out my hand, and he goes, "I know you. You're Matt." And I thought, that's it. I've died and I've gone again. Yep. Thank you very much. And it was great because I got that affirmation from him, who'd heard the recording, and that was just really, really lovely moment. So that was really special to do that. On the jazz side, I think one of the big moments, and thank you, Nathan, for giving me the opportunity to talk. It's just like me, name drop, but thank you.
Oh no, it's a safe place. I mean, you're more welcome to drop as many as you like.
Well, in that case, when I was doing a quartet gig, and we got accepted to play at the Beijing International Jazz Festival. Mm-hmm. I think it was called Ninegates at the time, and it was with a quartet led by Glyn MacDonald, who's a wonderful piano player who now has gone to live in New Zealand. One of the few COVID-free places in the world, apart from here.
Yeah.
And he writes this wonderful, again, this mix. It's definitely jazz, but it's what I call really human jazz, where it can go anywhere, and all of the tunes and all of the platforms are just any audience can really understand and get. It's not simple music, but it's very human music. So we played this gig. Or I should say, before the afternoon, we were doing the sound check, and I had, what was I playing? Tenor and soprano, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was tenor and soprano. And I, set up the soprano and the tenor and everything, and I turned around and talking to someone, and I heard, bang! I said, "Oh, you're kidding me."
Jeez.
Turned around, and there was my soprano down, and I've got a straight soprano, but it wasn't so straight.
Ugh.
So anyway, luckily, at the time I was with Yamaha, and there was a Yamaha rep there who sprinted up and said, I'm so sorry. What can we do to help? And so we ran across to the I think it was a military band repairer who sat there. He came in. He was called in and sat there and knocked the soprano back into shape.
Wow.
In a couple of hours, and I was just, thought, oh. Anyway, so I got to the gig, and I was already a bit, and the guy came in who helped us to get over there. Came and said, "Look, we've got a sold out crowd. It's really good." It was at I think they call it the National Library Performance Centre or something.
Okay.
Really, really cool venue. Anyway, played this gig, and it just felt wonderful. It just so gorgeous. And we were told that with some of the audiences, if they talked while you're playing, it's a really good thing. It's a way that some audiences show appreciation. Other than other ones where it's like shh.
Yeah.
And anyway, we started playing, and they started talking, and we started playing, and they started talking, and we kept playing, and they kept on talking. So we thought, oh, this is great. Anyway, so at the end of the gig, it was just really good. Really big ovation. Just felt really, really validated. Went backstage, and the manager literally ran me, pushed the door open, and he said, "Unbelievable." I said, "What?" He said, it's a standing ovation, and they want another one. They want an encore.
Wow. Wow.
And we thought, wow, this is really nice. And Glenn said, why is this? I mean, it's unbelievable to us that this is happening, but why do you say unbelievable? He said, I've only ever seen this happen once in Beijing, and that was for an opera singer from Europe.
Wow.
Yeah. And we thought, oh, okay, well, we better go out and play something else. And just that thing of clearly my Mandarin is non-existent, but just being able to play and have this, I suppose, this connection and this rapport with the audience was phenomenal. Was just so good. And in this case, it happened to be jazz. And when they did talk to me afterwards, they said, do you have a CD like Kenny G? And I thought to myself, I wish I did now. I really wish I did. I missed this boat. I didn't read it well.
There goes the retirement.
Yeah, I know. So, they're two moments that were great. And last year I played a piece called Three Colombian Scenes by Victoriano Valencia that I heard Kenneth Che play in Shanghai the year before.
Oh, cool.
With the wind band here in Wappa. And that was another one of those experiences that was just... It was wonderful because the music hadn't been played in Australia before, but more than that, there weren't many live performances happening in Australia. Mm-hmm. And I just felt so privileged to be able to do this when so much of Australia was locked down, lock up, we're out again, we're restricted, we're not restricted, we're locked down. And suddenly I think, wow, I'm one of the few that can actually play this. So that was really special. Anyway.
Cool. No, I remember seeing that advertised. I was just like, oh man, I wish I could get over there, because it was like literally, the only thing happening at the time.
Yeah, where were you, mate? Just because you had to spend 2 weeks in lockdown and earn no money in the hotel. Come on.
Well, it's 4 weeks because it's 2 weeks there, 2 weeks
back.
back.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Now, I just want to maybe talk a little bit about some of the particular projects that you work with as a performer. Yep. First of all, talk a little bit about your work with orchestras. Now, as I said at the start, you work a bunch of different orchestras, and you do like a mixed bag of repertoire, a lot of the commercial programs, as well as the traditional, classical saxophone repertoire, all that jazz, blah blah blah. But is there a memorable orchestral performance that you've done? And again, why is it a memorable one for you?
I remember playing the Rachmaninoff Symphonic Dances, and it was Vladimir Verbitsky conducting, and Verbitsky is just one of these wonderful conductors that you just don't know what's going to happen. And that's, I like that. And he comes in with these new ideas and these big gestures and this thick, Eastern European accent, and everything is exciting, or everything is excitement, I should say. And I remember, it was before this gig that he said, he introduced himself. Said, ladies and gentlemen, of course, welcome to the stage, Verbitsky in the rehearsal. And they said, thank you very much, everyone. My wife and I are very exciting. And he looked around, everyone was laughing. To be here. Sorry, exciting to be here. And, and from then on in, it was like, great, okay, we're going to have some language difficulties, but the way he was able to impart the phrasing was just amazing. Anyway, so the way he was conducting Rachmaninoff in the rehearsals was very, very lush and romantic, and you get to the saxophone solo, and then sit there for 20 minutes afterwards, which is great because we've got the best seat in the house. Let's face it, we can sit there and and so he'd say saxophone was this and this and this and this and this. That's great. Okay, all right, more of this. Okay, good. Got to the first performance, and he was, of course, very, very emotional and very emoting, and it was great. Got the second one on Saturday night, and I remember he started this thing. He was about to start the dances, and looked around the orchestra, and then looked at me. And of course, as an orchestral saxophone player, you think, am I really in trouble? Is there something on my face? If I got this thing coming out of my nose, am I now, is everything I've done is just bad and you're about to sack me, or, he looked at me and I thought, okay, all right, just go with it. And then about 8 bars beforehand, he looked at me and his whole face just softened. And he gave me this look, and I won't try and do it because I can't. But it was the most inspirational look I have ever, and I can't remember playing it. I just can't remember it because I was so caught up. He captured me so much. I was so caught up in what he was doing, and he just eyeballed me the whole way. And so I played it, and at the end of it, I don't remember what I did, but it was exhilarating. It was one of the most otherworldly experiences, and I had to say to my wife afterwards, was I playing in tune? Because she's got very good ears. And people were saying that there was something different about that. There was something, So that was one of the amazing things about a brilliant, thing that happened in that one. Another one was playing with Ben Northey a few years ago when we did Gershwin recordings. Mm-hmm. And of course, Ben is a phenomenally intelligent person.
Yes.
Phenomenally informed person, and for those who don't know, a sax player. Mm-hmm. And so knowing all that, every time, of course, he's on stage, people like you and me are like sighing relief, going, great, he gets it, gets this, there's not an issue here. Some conductors are like, are you going to play in tune? I've been to other countries where they don't, And we did this set of Gershwin recordings, and I remember it was, again, I talked a few times about this word. It was this freedom that he allowed me to have, and because he gets it, because he gets Gershwin, because he gets music, because he gets orchestra, because he gets the saxophone, it was so freeing to play that. And I remember him saying after the performance to me, he said, you're one of the few players that can do that, where you can start here and go here and go here and go here. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying this because I am the champion, but because from someone like him, when they say something like that, you think, wow, that's that. I'm taking that. I'm going to get my phone. I'm going to record it. Can you just say that again, please? And that was a really inspiring thing to hear from him. Mm-hmm. But also him allowing me to do what I thought the interpretation should be. And I've been so fortunate to have so many orchestral gigs, but they're two that really. Oh, sorry, no, there's one more. So this was fun. sorry. Years ago, when Ben Folds was doing one of his early tours, mm-hmm. And I think he did this at each orchestra around the place, when he'd set up a riff in the orchestra and he start pointing to people and you get the solo. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. That was great. On you, Foldsy. Nice one. Yeah. That's really fun to really actually let go. Within the orchestral setting, but anyway.
No, that was good. I was fortunate to do one of those a few years ago, and the rehearsal was really funny because he just sprung it on the orchestra, and he's pointing to the second violins. He's like, "Okay, go," and they just look at each other like shell shocked. Yeah.
Go now? Which? What? How now? How? What now? What? Yeah.
Now, moving on, I want to talk a bit more about particular projects, focusing on some of the chamber works and the small group stuff that you're doing. Like, for instance, the Stiles brothers. I hear they're very stylish.
Down.
All right, you probably get it all the time. But of course, your projects with organ and reed quintet are read up as well. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the current projects or some of the recent projects that you've worked on, how they came about, who's involved, what's the sort of the MO behind each group, and what are some concert highlights with each group.
Yeah, okay. Well, the Stiles Brothers is I think people call it a passion project. Mm-hmm. It's just something I love doing. Because Simon was like I say, my first saxophone teacher, I end up weirdly phrasing like him, even all these years later. And there was a big chunk, probably about I don't know, 15 years ago, where we were just doing our own thing and not playing together at all. We'd play a whole lot of big band. Used to play a whole lot of big band things and some other jazz gigs and a couple of orchestral things. And then he was doing his thing and I was doing his thing. So a few years ago, we had a chat and Simon, was it Simon or me? I can't even remember. We both almost at the same time just said, we've got to do something together. We just have to, because we know what each other's going to do. We know how they're going to phrase. We know that you're about to go off and be a real silly duffer right now, but I'm going with it. Or I know that, you know what, you just run out and I need to come in and just pick up the load while you're having a rest, and then we'll dovetail and head out. So, and the other thing in between us is that we love essentially the same sort of music. So, whether it be the Crusaders, whether it be Brecker, and I suppose the idea came with, there's the Brecker brothers, let's have the Stiles brothers. Don't,
Yeah, I did remember about that.
Yeah, I know, there was a bit of that in there. And half the program for that first gig ended up being, Brecker tunes.
Nice.
Which was a lot of fun. And we just find that it's a real outlet for us. And it's just fun. The other thing is that we push each other. There's competition. As much as we say, haven't practiced and, haven't got it. It's like it's higher, faster, or louder, or go home. There is that bit. So that's kind of a bit exciting. And so when we're up on stage, there's that bit of, come on, mate, come on, where we go. So that's really nice. We did one last year just before the lockdown, and it was a weird gig because we knew lockdown was coming, and I felt really bad on stage because I was asking people to come out to a jazz club when we knew this thing was hitting Perth. And it was just a really weird vibe. So of course we haven't done anything since then. I talked to him about 2 weeks ago. So we're talking mouthpieces, as you do. Mm-hmm. And I got him to buy a Navarro, and yes. Anyway, and so we're looking to do one second half of the year. We just got to find out which venue and which date.
Yep.
We're going to do that one again. The organ one is wonderful, of course, because pipe organ and saxophone just sound so good together. Just, apart from the fact that saxophone sounds wonderful in any cathedral.
Of course.
Hides a multitude of sins. But this particular pipe organ is in the Basilica, St. Patrick's Basilica in Fremantle, played by Dominic Parasonotto, who's a Melbourne boy, made good in Perth. And he invited me to play with him, I don't know, it would be 15 years ago or so. And playing, and it was just this, again, a real jaw-dropping moment where, wow, there's so many colours that we intersect on. And there's so many things, so many settings that he can then come out in, and then I can join in, and then and it's this real musical interaction that happens. And so we've probably done about 8 or 9 recitals together over the years, and we've included Kathy Travers on piano accordion. Now wait for it, it really does work.
Okay.
And also she has a MIDI accordion as well, which just sounds, diabolical. It's incredible.
Okay.
And so we've done a couple of things. There's a couple of things on YouTube. There's a couple of pieces. It's a really interesting thing. Anyway, after years and years and years, we've decided, look, we've just got to record this damn thing. We'll sell 1.5 copies from, to my mum and to my wife, and, the rest of it's fine. And we're not doing it, to become the next best thing anyway. We're just doing it because we want a record of the work we've been doing.
Yeah. You don't make money on CDs, unfortunately, these days.
You don't. And if it's on Spotify, even less. Sorry, you can edit that bit later, right?
No.
Good. And so we're doing a recording. We're going through the grant process at the moment to do a recording in a couple of months' time. That will feature some Australian works, feature our version of the Carmichael Erin finale.
Okay.
which and I've got John's permission to do that. He was very cool about that. Kathy Travers, I mentioned, she's written this piece for all three of us called Heartbeat, and I'm playing alto and I think baritone for that. David Pye, another composer here, has written a piece for electronics, organ and soprano. We're also doing our version of Nemesis, Andy Scott's Nemesis.
Nice.
Barbara Thompson's Green. The piece where you just want to know where one is. And I think we're doing one other, I can't remember at the moment. So it's got a definite Australian composer flavour.
Yep.
With some other bits and pieces, and just a real recording of stuff that we love to do. We've done things like the Cimarosa and the Platti concertos in the past, but we want to keep away from that. That's not the taste or the flavour, I should say, that we're going for in this one. The trio that I love playing with is a percussion and piano. Percussion is Paul Tanner, who is one of these revolting people who with every limb can be doing something completely different metrical worlds and still, but then problem is he tries to explain it to you.
Nope.
So Paul, just give me one, let me work out the rest, I'm good, mate. He goes, yeah, but if you go to the dotted crotchets, then you go to there and then you go to the subliminal layer there on this one, and you go, no, mate, just play. Incredible vibes and marimba player. Again, someone who crosses over, who's had things written for him by people like Roger Smalley, and it's just incredible classical musician, but incredible jazz musician and Latin and African and world musician too. Just really good. And Adam Pinto, piano, who is very, he's of course everyone in the saxophone world knows Adam, who can sight read, everything, anywhere, at any point. We all hate him, but he's brilliant and love him.
Monster player.
A monster player, absolutely. And so between us, because we've got these different flavors, where Adam is incredible player, but very, very classically founded. It doesn't mean he does traverse into the others at all, but that's his foundation. Paul, who's actually a very much I suppose you say, an expert in the avant-garde, but also, plays a lot of the sort of Gary Burton, Chick Corea stuff. Wonderful congas player, Latin American, African, and then me, who's just, weird and unemployable. What we then end up doing is creating these things that are really interesting. And we're playing a gig, for those of you who are in Perth, we're playing a gig at Whopper on March 31st, put it in your diaries, which will be mostly Australian works, adaptation of some Roger Smalley things. We'll be doing a premiere by Callum O'Reilly, wonderful composer who's just graduated from Whopper, really brilliant, and a few others on the way through. And we're looking to do a bit more recording and touring and so forth, but just waiting for
stuff.
Things to be
cool.
So that's pretty much what I'm working on, I suppose, at the moment.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a massive rap sheet of different projects and things got on the boil, which is fantastic. I'm
tired, Nathan. I'm tired.
Yeah, I know. I was just wondering, where do you actually sleep in between all this?
I don't.
Yeah, right. I want to take it back a little bit, and pick your brains, because as you've mentioned, so many wonderful projects and wonderful opportunities, and the question I want to ask is more for people looking to start out a career in music, or recent graduates and stuff, and ask you, what advice would you give to young musicians looking to get started in finding gigs? Is it a matter of going to hang out with people, going to jams? Is it networking, putting yourself out there? Like, what sort of tips and tricks did you encounter and pick up along the way that you can impart?
Yeah, I mean, everything you said just then. The as far as tips and tricks of when I was going through, I really wasn't given many tips. But what I suppose I discovered and learnt the hard way was, be really aware of what's out there. I found that I felt, when I was younger, I fell very easily into the trap that, oh yeah, I know the industry, I get it, No. And because when you do, there's always something more. And because of the prevalence of communication in so many forms, there is so much out there. So the first thing I say to people is be really, like in research, as we say, do your lit review. Find out what's out there. Find out who's doing what, where they're doing it, how they're doing it. Find out things, even if you don't think you would like them, seek them out. And when you've done that, of course, a lot of it can be done just sitting in front of the box here. Mm-hmm. Then when you've sort of done that, or as you're doing that, I should say, go and see as much stuff as possible. This is where I think I'm really fortunate working at this crazy, wonderfully crazy, chaotic place called WAPA, because we've got musical theatre, acting, performance, classical ballet, contemporary dance, production design, Aboriginal theatre, then we get to music, the classical, jazz, contemporary, composition, etc. And the students can see, a Caucasian chalk circle one night, then go and see 42nd Street another night, then go and see the composers in the laptop orchestra the next night, then come and see Geoffrey Lancaster do interpretations of Beethoven on a forte piano that was actually made for him. Then you go and see Paul Wright and Stuart Smith do these Baroque interpretations that are mind-blowingly beautiful. Then you see Emma Matthews, doing these incredible arias that you're just there crying at the end of it. I think the first thing is, to find out what's out there, not only in your field, but in other fields, to go and see as much as possible, to go and with an open mind all the time, mm-hmm. to really think, okay, what don't I know that's going to help me to know what I know, to know more. Because at that point, when I find that when students come up and talk to me, or someone comes up and talks to me, you can tell that there's this willingness to talk and listen and converse and have a two-way thing. And secondly, you can always tell there's a knowledge base there.
Yeah.
There's almost a humility, maybe that's it. And then go and talk to people, be brave enough to go and talk to someone, and don't be a knob about it, but go and talk to someone. If you're doing a gig, if Nexus is doing a gig, you guys are very approachable. Well, except for Michael, I suppose. You go. Sorry, he's not there, is he? No,
he's not here. He's all right.
No, yeah, it's good. You're all very approachable. Go and talk to you. Go and ask about what you're doing. If I'm doing something, go and talk to me about what is happening. If Ness is doing something, go and ask her. If Niels is doing something, go and talk to them. If Lockie Davidson is there, or Barry or whatever, go and talk to them. And find out and be really open to finding out what's there, and be involved in communication. My wife teaches social skills. One of the few people in Australia whose profession is just, teaching social skills. And it's something I think every one of us, me included, needs to be able to do, to be able to hold a conversation, to listen, that kind of whole, I'm not just going to, like I'm doing right now. To be involved, to be interested, to see things from another person's point of view. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. To be like an active listener who's, sort of engaged in words. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And not to limit yourself to anything. The other thing I'd say to people is, absolutely network. Absolutely go and see what venues. That's the other thing, of course. Because I know here in Perth, there are so many more venues now, and so many more small venues. Really is a very cool culture. that has been growing for a number of years. Find out the different venues. Go and talk to the managers. Find out what they're looking for. Be able to adapt. If they're looking for something quirky, then if you want to play at that venue, be quirky.
Yeah.
Don't sell your soul to the devil, but be quirky. If one of the tunes they want you to play is Kenny G, well, great. Go and do it. Just make sure the chicken wire's there, so when people are ditching stuff at you, no.
Yeah.
But then while they're doing that, be prepared that if someone is interested in what you do, be able to go, right, okay, rather than not having practice for 6 months, be ready to jump in and go, right, okay, yeah, I'll turn up and we'll have a play. Be musically prepared to do all that. The only other thing is I'd say seek out composers, especially young up-and-coming composers. Work with them, collaborate them, try and create a new voice. Or if there's someone's voice you love and you want to be the instrument for that voice, go and talk to them. Composers are wonderful human beings.
Yeah.
They make our life worth living so much of the time.
And being at university is a perfect opportunity to network and develop lifelong, relationships with, composers and performers alike.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, again, at Weckl, we're very fortunate. We've got 74 or 75 composers across the years, and they want to write for us. When I go to Lindsay Vickery, the head of composition, say, look, would any of your composers? Yes. Actually, yes.
Yes.
And one of the composers who's just graduated, Jonathan Yang, I think, yeah, hi Jasmine, you know where I'm going with this one. He's already garnered a lot of acclaim and a lot of notice, I suppose you could say. He wrote this piece called Brave the Wave, which is one of these lockdown orchestral pieces that Whopper did.
Okay.
And if you haven't checked it out, it's not just me going, yay, Whopper. It kind of is. But it's actually really good. It's a really good piece. Anyway, he's just graduated, and he's agreed to be the composer in residence for the Phone Co, our sax ensemble, this year. So we're looking forward to some really cool stuff from him. And they're the kind of relationships you can develop from uni, like you say.
Nice. Now, moving on to a different topic, I'm pretty sure everyone who's listening is sort of already aware that you're a very multifaceted saxophonist, a musician, in terms of not just what you do, but stylistically. And I don't want to put words in your mouth in any way. But
if you could use these words, that'd be great. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, not at all. But
I'm writing them down.
No. Feel free to reword it in your own terms. But I'll be assuming that it would be correct that you would consider yourself to be quite a holistic saxophonist. And what that is referring to is that you sort of have a broad spectrum of the different aspects of the saxophone and its repertoire, so not just specializing in, say, the classical field or the jazz field, but and being able to sort of switch hit between all those different styles.
I think so.
Yep.
I aim to be.
It was a bit of a long-winded thing, but the reason I'm bringing that up is because it's such a there's only a handful of people that I would know, and this is including yourself on this list, who have the ability to switch between the styles and maintain such a high level of ability in each of those styles without sort of sort of leaning towards one style or the other. For me personally, this is something I battle with a lot, and I really am amazed at how people like yourself can do this. But what I wanted to ask was, first of all, I think you might have touched on this a little bit, but was it a deliberate decision for you to be a multi-genred saxophonist, or is it something that sort of was the natural progression of sort of how you developed?
Yeah, good question. I don't remember a point where I decided. I think I was lucky in growing up, going through high school and listening to my brother and so forth, that it was never just one genre of music. It was just music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think I ever made the choice. It was just something that I found, I suppose, it's going to sound very big-headed, but I sounded natural. It sounded natural to me to want to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's never a point where I decided to do one or the other. It's like you say, and as you know, it's tricky, because it's for something like if I've got a Stiles Brothers gig coming up, for example, where I know that for the 2 hours we're playing, probably an hour of that it's improvising time. So I've got to make sure my language is there. I've got to make sure that I have I remember the tricks in my bag, or I remember my scale tone harmony relationships. I remember the ideas that I have. I have an open mind enough to know that I can draw, that I should draw from the band as it's happening on stage, all the rest of it. And that's a lifelong journey in itself. As you know, and that's hard. I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't spend nearly as much time. So I suppose what I make sure I do to try and make sure I'm attuned to it all is that when I can't play it, I'm listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I've just come off a week where I've done something like an orchestral gig, and I'm going to something like Stiles Brothers or something, apart from probably the minute I leave the concert hall and I'm in the car, I mean, sometimes I just want to listen to talk radio or nothing. I don't want to listen to music.
Yeah, understandable.
Or it's either that night or the very next day, on goes the next genre for me to get back into my aural awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of keeps me reminding myself and keeps myself flexible.
Yep.
This whole idea of neuroplasticity, where you're constantly creating new neural pathways, and if you leave one, if you're not accessing one for a long time, it loses this myelin or sugar coating, and so you don't naturally go down that pathway. You end up going down the road most travel, as they say.
Mm.
But trying to keep my neuroplasticity, that's as much as I know, by the way. It's just neuroscience. That's enough.
Very impressive, though.
Thank you very much. It's in a book. It's in my upcoming book. No, it's not. It is to keep that neuroplasticity going, and so I'm accessing those pathways. So I'm keeping them fresh. Mm-hmm. You know what it feels like when you're playing, or you're learning something, and and all you can do to describe it is my brain hurts. Now, I've read that that's when you're forging a new pathway, where you're getting your neurons to fire slightly differently, and it's a physical sensation because it's a physical thing. Mm. So trying to access those pathways as much as possible, and listening and making sure. And I think I know I'm probably getting off topic, right?
Oh, it's sort of still there.
Okay. To access all that, then that enables me to be, I suppose, if you want to call it holistic, I don't know, versatile, someone who is itchy enough in their musical taste to want to keep doing all of them. Mm. There you go.
Nice. Now, because you've sort of got these different hats, this would have an impact on the way that you would interpret music. Again, because you do have this knowledge bank from different sound worlds and things. So, for instance, if you were to approach eBay, for instance, like you wouldn't just have that sort of classical saxophone knowledge, but you also have jazz knowledge and things like that. And there are elements, very subtle elements, even in eBay's music. How do you find that sort of conglomerate of stylistic knowledge in your head affects your interpretation of music in general?
It's a good question, actually, because sometimes it affects it and it really shouldn't. Yeah, sorry, guys. We're not recording that, right? Yeah, good. Don't record that. Look, it's interesting. Because if we think about something like, and I'm not bagging this for a second, but if we think about something like Branford Marsalis's version of the Eber, and he rewrote the cadenza, and or offered a different version of it. I think with something like that, what I try and do is with every genre that I'm playing, I need to make sure I'm respecting the genre, I'm respecting the composer, I'm respecting the field. But what there is in there, outside of there, is while there are some absolute staple interpretations of something, since we're talking about the Ibert, I love Rousseau's, the Deutsche Grammophon recording. Of course, there's a lot of others that people like. I'm just, choosing one. There's a freedom, I think, to be able to interpret within that genre, but to learn the language of the genre, to be able to play someone else's interpretation and understand why, but then to have the freedom to go beyond that. So while we don't necessarily have there's a whole lot of inflections we will not bring into Ibert from jazz and funk and other things, and a certain amount of articulation we will not be bringing into it because it just doesn't belong. I think there are things like, something like Ibert or Ravel, where the harmonies are so rich. For me, the harmonies are a trigger for me. And so you end up leaning towards or leaning on or jumping from a certain harmony that maybe you would hear perhaps more in jazz. Of course, jazz, borrows from and so forth. Yeah. But that complexity or that crunch, like in the second movement, the slow part of the Ibert, there's a couple of moments where it's just... and there's a couple of chords where you can really lean on it that maybe if you were just using it from just approaching it from a purely traditional classical point of view, you may not. Mm-hmm. So harmony is one kind of safe area that I think you can delve into without compromising the true nature of a piece like that. Yeah. So you can bring in that, I think harmony is a good thing. A rhythm, of course, there are some points where you can maybe lean towards here and there, and some phrases where you can really kind of flitter. You can almost have, if you hear someone, let's use Brecker, with a phenomenal technique, and the way he goes through, sextuplets, demi-semis, wemi, semi, demi, semi, wemi, demis, that sort of effortless thing where no one note is more important than the other, but it ends up being a color. And no doubt people talk about classical music in the same way, but I find that I can approach things with a lot more with a freedom, and sometimes I think WWOD, what would Otis do, and I'm lucky, very fortunate to have a sort of relationship where he'll go, yeah, okay, all right, that's fine. But it's a flexibility. I think it's an openness that I think if you're open to other things that you can bring in. But I think you've always got to. There's no point in playing Ibert vadu 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 vadu. Although I'd love to hear the recording of that. That'd be great. I'm not doing it. Maybe that's for you. But...
No, it's okay. I'll pass.
Anyway.
But I think, so summarising what you were just saying, it's a sort of thinking contextually, musically, what it is you're doing, and trying to, I guess, use your musical knowledge and interpretation skills to work out what's going to fit stylistically and appropriately. And, in a nutshell, I would assume that's pretty much it. Yep.
Yeah, and a lot of the repertoire now, of course, coming through mixes both up.
Yes.
And at that point, I'm the happiest camper in the world. Because then you can truly borrow from the deep pedagogies from all worlds. One of my students is doing escapades. And so, of course, you listen to Dan O'Higgins's version of that. Yep. And he's North Texas, I think, trained, And of course, there's an amazing training where you're doing classical and jazz, but, 1 o'clock lab band, it's big jazz. It's fantastic, He comes from that more jazz side of things, but leans beautifully into the classical. And so a piece like that, you can go, well, okay, you can play or you can actually start leaning. You can start actually putting a few things, especially when you get after that opening bit. Anyway. Yeah. So there's repertoire that allows us to do that more now, which is cool.
Yeah. Now, here's a bit of a rabbit hole question.
What, you mean the other ones weren't? Oh, well, no, sorry. eBay playing swung. Yeah, that was rabbit hole.
Oh, you started that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that was me, mate.
But,
sorry.
I guess one of these questions, which a lot of people who are looking into, delving into, jazz and classical playing concurrently, is the idea of sound concept and equipment. Now, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, as we all know. But just be curious to hear about sort of the things that you do in terms of like how you juggle those sound worlds with the elements, and what sort of things you've discovered and what you found works, what doesn't work, and what could you care to share on that subject?
Yeah, okay. And as you say, you ask every person, everyone's going to have a different look on it, which is very cool, and especially with our instrument, it's very, very cool.
There's no wrong answer.
No, luckily. Well, I know one of the things I did wrong led to a pretty major injury, and that was I tried to play, particularly on alto, I tried to play all genres with the same setup in the same way. And that just led to so many problems with my jaw, with all of my muscles around it, which just, led to a whole lot of other things that went horribly wrong. So don't do that. However, what I found is, and of course I'm always searching for, a different sound and a better way of doing things. Saxophone nerd. Is I found things like mouthpieces. While there are mouthpieces that are designed and work beautifully for classical music, if you play them in the same way for something like a big band gig, you're kind of it's not gonna work as well, potentially. If, however, you're playing, and this is where I think orchestral work is kind of cool, because if you're playing with something, and as you and I know, in one program, they can be playing Rachmaninoff, and then you're playing Gershwin, and then there's a new piece that requires you to delve absolutely into the avant-garde or the jazz world, and so you're not going to sit there changing mouthpieces halfway through the gig. It's a bit silly. And at that point, I find the reed choice is incredibly important, and so if that's the case, and I need to be more versatile, and there's the opportunity where the basis of what I'm doing delves more into the classical realm, I suppose, is that I make sure that my reed is flexible enough, is essentially thin enough, that it can become whatever sound I want it to become. So if I need to warm it up, then I can voice it, and I can lower it, and I can everything. And if I need to edge it up, then I can change and do that with that sort of stuff. Having said that, however, I think it's really important to have multiple setups. And it's really hard to find setups that you can go from one to the other where it doesn't feel like you're going from, sucking a stogie of a cigar to something that is, as small as that kind of idea.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to try a lot of different mouthpieces if possible. I know in Australia it's hard to get them in sometimes. I tend to play classical mouthpieces that are a little bigger, perhaps.
Yep.
I used to play on the AL3, and that was wonderful, and the Russo the 4R, and wonderful mouthpieces, but I just found they were too limiting.
Yep. And
so you get to the S90, 180, 190, 200 kind of things, then you've got a bit more to work with there. And people have used them on jazz gigs, and it works. Perhaps the quartet gigs, yeah, but not necessarily the big band gigs. Yep. People love going on to the mayors, and the mayors are really good. Although I find that they find there's a limit to pushing them. There's an openness I want that they won't give me. And also, of course,
an inconsistency in all those mouthpieces as well, of course.
Yes. Unless you want to go for the New York vintage, then you're paying $1,000. And they do. Some of them do sound incredible. So I've tried to find mouthpieces. I've tried to find, like with my classical mouthpiece, I know there's a kind of a bank in my mind anyway of reeds that I will go to depending on what I'm playing for it. Mm-hmm. Whether I'm playing chamber, whether I'm playing a solo across, the sax ensemble or an orchestra or wind band. The ligature will stay the same because I find that's my stability. But I'll find, I know that at least 4 different reeds I'd use for the same mouthpiece. If I need to be variable for that, I won't just go for the one. For the jazz and funk stuff, I've tried to find mouthpieces that, of course, are going to feel differently, but things like the beak profile is a bit more similar to that. And so I won't use classical mouthpieces that feel really huge in my mouth. Like the S80s and the 90s and so forth. They're somewhere in between, in the way I feel them anyway. So something like the Azens are a really interesting mouthpiece, especially for the funk things. The Dorio Jazz Select Marble Edition, I find a good. They got a bit of projection on them. I just thought I'd follow because you got a T-shirt on and
Oh yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, nice.
Hi,
yeah, that's right, Stu. And for tenor, it's interesting. I've been going through a whole lot of different things, and for tenor, I can't play small mouthpieces.
Okay.
I like this a small facing. I can't do it. Probably because I didn't start too well playing classical on. I started playing classical on D and went straight to a link. That wasn't the smartest choice.
That's quite a change.
Yeah, that was stupid, I think. Please don't anyone do that, because that's bad. That's bad. But and so I can't play small. It just doesn't agree with me. Recently, I've been playing something that's more the smaller profile, the kind of T20, or most recently the TL5.
Oh yeah. Which
I was quite surprised at, because I like a warmth and I like to be able to stretch, but I like to be able to bring it down. Of course, if it's ensemble work, of course. So I try to have a few different things, and on tenor I use either the Morgan Fry 7-star or a Navarro Bob Mintzer bebop, which is a tremendous mouthpiece.
Nice.
But all of them are. I know that I need to change reeds so that, and I try to take a similar approach to my embouchure, knowing, of course, that there are some things that subtone and other bits of pieces of muting notes, so forth, you've got to change for. But try and find some midpoint within that. Mm-hmm. So switching, I'm still trying to find the right switching stuff, but I've got a bank of reeds I kind of know that I want to go for. I have a basic concept, and I know whether I want more freedom or less freedom. Okay. And I kind of go from there.
Cool. What advice would you give to saxophone players?
Don't. Oh, sorry, go on. Yes.
Well, I haven't finished yet, but what advice would you give sax players wanting to develop equal proficiency in both, in simplistic terms, either a jazz or classical, or either commercial or beyond? What kind of things or exercises and things could you prescribe?
Okay. No matter what type of music you're going to play, the fundamentals, whether we want to assign them to a classical or not, I don't think it really matters. The fundamentals of making sure your air is efficient as possible, and making sure that your voicing is really good, that your altissimo is not an issue, your overtones are not a huge thing. Doesn't matter whether you're playing jazz or classical or funk or whatever. To be able to access that extra resonance wherever you are in the horn, of course, it's got to be different for every mouthpiece. So, those sort of things are, I think, are fundamental no matter what you're doing, of course. And I'm sure I'm not saying anything that people don't know already. The things that I would practice with is if you are coming in up to a period where you're doing both, or you just want to do both more often, and it's like when you're doubling instruments, or using any doubling instruments, your flute and clarinet and so forth, is to actually practice going from one to another. So perhaps one morning, warm up on your classical setup, and make sure that your embouchure's feeling good, your fingers are feeling nimble and versatile and flexible, that you really feel like you're using a lot of air and all that kind of stuff. Then if there's nothing really pressing, I'll keep going.
Okay.
If there's nothing really pressing then I would say get your jazz set up and see how much you can bring across to that. And so do the same exercises, do the same sorts of things, and try. And then, of course, you're going for a different sound at this point. Mm-hmm. Just because if it's a different mouthpiece, different reed, it's going to produce a different sound. But get those fundamentals and transfer them across, but be open to the fact that they will be different and relax with it. Don't force it to happen, because I know that going from one to another, I went through a period where because there was a lot of change of gigs happening in a very short space of time, I just built up this tension, which of course is, I said, has led to injury and a few other bits and pieces. But allow that process to happen when you're going to one another, of adjusting to things. The other thing is that if you're basically wanting to do, if you're happy with it, with a sound that's more, say, classical, for instance, but you're still wanting to delve into those other areas, there's nothing saying that you can't start, and you should start to be practicing your jazz scales, the scales that do associated with the more jazz things, going through your modes, going through 2-5-1 exercises. As much as people may or may not like Jamie Abersol, there's a reason why he's got 110 plus albums, and they're very useful, And he's got some good exercises too in the beginning volumes, well, and a great non-clementure in each one of them. So don't hold yourself back of delving into the style or your language on something that you may think shouldn't belong to that, like a classical sound or a classical mouthpiece. Mm-hmm. I think we don't want to limit ourselves. Of course, jazz mouthpiece is designed with more of that sound and more of those ideas in mind.
Yeah.
But you can still do the odd scoop. Just don't scoop too much, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a sin in the old saxophone world.
Oh, look, there's a note there. Sorry, everyone. But I think if you can do, and then conversely, if you're trying to work in a jazz mouthpiece and you've done more classical stuff, then use the classical ideals to develop that, because you're familiar with them. It's this whole thing of meeting yourself where you're at. If that's where you're more comfortable with as far as understanding exercise, then absolutely do those. But then start working in transcriptions. And don't go straight to the Brecker transcriptions, because they're a little bit hard. Do Miles Davis once. Do Chet Baker once. Look at some of the early Stan Getz. They're still crotchet equals 4 billion. Lester Young, any of the ones where it's very melodic, but it's still very much a style-based thing. So it becomes style-specific, not sound or setup-specific.
Yeah.
I'll stop there because it is a rabbit hole.
Yeah, and you can talk all night about it for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Now, moving on to another area. Again, you're a bit of a dark horse when it comes to the different things that you do. But
don't tell my wife, all right? She's just in the other room, but she's not listening.
No, it's all right. I'll put it on YouTube later. She can Now, the other thing I was going to mention is that you're also a fantastic composer. Now, you've written a couple of pieces. I had the good fortune, myself and Niels, to play a piece that you wrote for 12 tenors.
That was fun. There was just one bit you guys didn't do, and I know why you didn't do it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was 12 tenors, it's quite a sound.
Yeah.
And then also quite recently you released a solo work via Astute Music, our friends over across the pond in the UK. Just want to talk a little bit, how did you actually get into composing?
Well, firstly, thank you for using the word composer. I wouldn't call myself a composer. I write music and, it goes from there, but thank you anyway. Look, one of the things I learned from my Churchill Fellowship is that if we take a lot of the American sax players and other players have done, in that they have broadened their horizons far more than just playing and teaching, and I'm not putting either of those down. Then I've got to know Andy Scott really well, and I love where he's come from, because he's come from a bassoon to a saxophone to a composing and then everything in between world. And he's such a free thinker for so many things. So that, I think talking to him a lot really inspired me, because I've always had ideas. And I've always thought, there's something that I would love to see and hear and play out there that isn't out there. And I've always thought, oh, well, look, I'm just one person. Who the hell am I to write this? And so it was, that solo piece you talk about, One, came out when I was just doodling, and I thought, I know, I heard Alto Genesis, a piece by Rob Weckl.
Okay.
And I thought, there's so much the saxophone can do. How much can it do just on its own that can be played? I didn't want to write something that is completely unapproachable and that only university students can play. I want something that is, high school students can play. So it's not silly hard, but it's fun, And so I came up with the idea of, okay, the drum kit, and again, not the newest idea. We see that kind of idea coming through in Black and Blue.
Yep.
But use that as the whole way through. So I create my own rhythm section, and then I create layered loops on the side. But it's not a loop station thing, of course. That you just create it, and then I just recorded it, and then I leave that bit out, and then the person who can then play the bit or the person plays the riff, and then the recording picks it up, and then they go on to the next one. And I've just always had these ideas that I'd love to play, and I think also I've gained confidence knowing that I have a compositional background from 2 generations ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I forget my, hang on, great uncle, great uncles, London-based. One was wrote hymns for the Anglican hymn book.
Right.
Smart is his second name, and his brother was the organist at Westminster Abbey. Yeah. So there's this kind of tradition there, and I've always wanted to, and I thought, let's just give it a go. It might end up being crap, but I'm having fun.
Yeah.
And I sent it across to Andy, and he went, "Oh yeah, don't mind that. Yeah, that's okay. All right." We tweaked it up a bit and so forth. And writing for the Tenor Sax Collective was that was just fun, and I knew it was going to be just conglomerate of silliness. And I'm not saying the Tenor Sax Collective is conglomerate of silliness. I wish I'd made it over there to play with you guys, but I just couldn't get it. But I knew that my piece was just, I don't take myself too seriously when I'm writing. I have fun with it. And I put a couple of quirky things in, like the piece you talked about. There's a bit where people are supposed to drink. And, anyway, that's just, And I think it started because years beforehand, I wrote a piece called Jinga when I was in London. Funnily enough, after seeing Chick Corea. Yep. And I wrote this piece really quickly. sometimes you have an idea and it just comes out, and it's really rare and it's really fortunate. And I wrote this piece and I thought, oh, that's great. Well, that led to an ensemble piece that I then wrote for the RNCM Sax Ensemble when I went over their sax day years ago.
Yeah.
And that was after that then, Matt London and Andy said, oh, do you want to write something for Sax Collective? And it seems like it comes from more of the jazz or world side of things as far as an idea that I have, because I feel more confident that I can write in that style, which is why, when people say you've composed, well, I write stuff and put it down and people play it, So I suppose that's kind of how I got into it and why I got into it.
Nice. Have you written anything for, say, Stiles Brothers or anything in a jazz setting at all?
Yeah, there's one. There's a piece I wrote called "It's Coming," and I wrote it when my wife found out she was pregnant with our son, and it was one of these moments. Well, actually, no, I wrote it about 7 months into the pregnancy.
Okay.
When it suddenly dawned on me, oh, it's real. There's actually a baby coming. Oh, it's not. Oh. Okay, male.
Yeah.
And so I sat down and thought, it's coming. And then I just started writing this thing. And it starts off with this 7/4 kind of groove, which is kind of how I was feeling, there but not there. And at the time I was thinking about this this idea that I hear Brecker using a lot, which is this major and minor third together, at the octave. And so I wrote that, and we've played it. Stiles Brothers and Simon sort of said, oh, have you got anything else? And so I brought out Jingo and arranged that for ours as well. And I'm hoping to write a couple more for the upcoming one because I know I feel comfortable writing that because I know what Simon likes and I know what I like.
Yeah. And
so, if it's crap, well, we'll just play it better and make sure it's not crap.
Is there any things that you've learnt writing pieces that is something that you care to share in terms of the things that you might have encountered or roadblocks or things that that you would say to people wanting to start doodling or sketching out some ideas?
Yeah, okay. Look, I'd say if you've got an idea, write it down, or my best friend is my phone. And I'm in the car. Well, I don't use my phone in the car, okay? Anyone else? I don't use my phone. But if I'm not, I can't write anything down. If I'm walking around or, at the gym or something, and I come up with an idea, I just start singing it, and I look like an idiot. I start singing it into my phone. Whatever idea you've got, if you think it gets me, I like this idea, then write it down. And if you can't write it down, then say it, sing it, tap it, whatever, into a phone. And build up a list of ideas. And then when you get home, and if it's on your phone, just write it down. Often it's 4 bars or 8 bars or something. I don't know. If you're lucky and you've got the entire symphony, well, I want to know who you are. How do you do it? But have this compendium, I suppose, of ideas. Even if you never go back to them, what I find you do then is that because you're thinking of ideas, the next one will be 1% or 10% or 50% on from your last idea. So just trust your ideas and just put them down. I know I've looked back. In fact, I found a folder, this one, funnily enough, of stuff that I'd, filed away. And I was looking through it today thinking, yeah, that's not very good, is it? But I know there's a few things I saw in there that I thought, oh, that's where I got the idea from. Okay. And it's an idea, that I write down. So I think that's the first thing. Secondly, because we are sax players, start improvising with it. Because this is also, I think, something according to, we talk about plurality and holistic. Playing more stuff.
Yep.
It also helps your improvisation language as well. You talk to any a jazz artist and they will write as well. And they say it's part of my toolkit. When you hear someone like Chris Potter improvise, it's like he is real-time composing.
Yeah.
It's that structured. It's just that phenomenal, 9.5 minute solo he does with Snarky Puppy.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, that is a written down piece of genius. You know,
it's nuts.
It is nuts. You know, so I think that, and so that has a lot of things that are good for you apart from composing. So and don't disregard anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find something you like that someone else has done, write it down and ask yourself why you like it. Of course, you know, plagiarism, copyright, you know, blah, blah, blah. But also the old saying, there's nothing new under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ravel, Wagner, and John Cage have done everything, so there's not much left. But if if your twist on something, if you find something you like and you put your twist on it, you never know where it can lead. So trust yourself. It may lead nowhere, and you may find actually it's not very good. That's okay. And the other thing is talk to people who have composed.
Yeah.
And be brave enough to go, what do you reckon? And be open to that process. And I know with someone like Andy, I've said to him, can I run this by you? And he says, no, you don't want to run by me. He says, just get something and show me, and then I'll show you something of mine, and then we'll just have a chat about stuff.
Okay.
You know, and that's a really useful and very positive way of doing things. But yeah, talk to people who've done it before and be open to that.
Yeah, cool. Now, I'll try and fast track the rest of this because I know it's sort of going on in the evening, and try not to keep you longer than I need to. But
I know the Pinot is not going to breathe forever. You know, I need to. You know. I
know. Your research. Now we've sort of touched on that during the course of the interview. Particularly your postgraduate research. Firstly on the music of Turnage, and also the research on the investigating a holistic approach to saxophone injury prevention and rehabilitation. Sorry, that's a mouthful and a half.
I need to get better titles. I know.
Well, yeah, I had the same problem with my doctoral thing, but that was cool. Anyway, could you tell us? I know you've talked about bits and pieces of it, but maybe just talk about very briefly, like sort of what the focus was on each of those research things, and were there any outcomes, any decisive results in there, or is it all still developing or anything like that?
Well, the doctorate stuff with Turnage, that's kind of, to be honest with you, is my mission statement.
Yep.
It's the bringing together of music, and asking the question, is there a way we can define the genre that this all belongs to, and or why should we bother defining? Mm-hmm. I mean, really, at the end of the day, because everything is so mishmash now. Yeah. So I suppose that from that point of view, that's just ongoing, and I'm always trying to find a new way of expressing that, a new way of trying to describe the music, a new way just to try to interpret, I suppose. The injury thing is something that I've dipped into and out of in between all my teaching, the 3.5 minutes that I have left at the end of the day. Because as I mentioned, I got really injured, to the point where for 6 months I couldn't play, and I was considering, going to uni and doing something else, just changing my career entirely, because it just wasn't happening. But it was through that process that I found out there's all these answers that people don't know and people haven't looked at yet, which I found fascinating. So something that's quite concrete, like injury prevention, which delves into physiotherapy, biomechanics, sports science, it really appeals to me now, because while you have that ethereal music you play and it goes, there's something about the real solidity of someone is not getting injured anymore. It's, like you say, an outcome. And I suppose over the last few years, I've just been building up the information I've known, and also the people that I want to work with. And so I'm now just going through ethics clearance at my university, because I'm about to launch a questionnaire to Australia, Europe, UK, and parts of North America, just to see the severity. I hear people talking about injury, getting injured, and I know there was a questionnaire done just last year in parts of North America, but I want to go wider and find what is the extent of this, and what are the main issues that we're coming across. You know, is it the back? Is it the neck? Is it the arms, the wrists? You know, all the rest of it. So I'm waiting for that, and then I'm going to launch this questionnaire as soon as I can. Clifton Chan from USyd Physiotherapy is a vital part of this. Luke Hopper, Biomechanics at WAPA, is helping me with this. From that point onwards, then we're going to look at, okay, what's going to be the most benefit for people? Which part of this study is going to be the most benefit? I've already done some motion capture and EMG studies looking at muscle activation of when you use an ergonomic stand that's been developed in ANU with John Mackey.
Okay.
I brought it along and terrorised a few people at the Melbourne International a few years ago. And just to find out, because this thing takes the entire weight off your neck. You can approach it. You can put your tenor and your baritone on this thing, and it's got a counterbalance, so you can actually go up to it and play and have no weight on your shoulders.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's going to go to market fairly soon. John Mackey's done an amazing job with this, and the engineers at ANU. So that's where we sort of started. We'd love to look at the muscle activation of different neck straps will, you know, bring about or help.
Yep.
And and I'm not sure where it's going to lead, but I've made a lot of contacts with UK people as well, and there's Healthy Conservatoires UK, which we hope to work with over time and kind of build a program for that. Now, interestingly, Nikki Demendo, who I'm sure you know, has come across here to do a PhD with me in this area, and her angle is looking at the efficacy of yoga.
Okay. As
part of things, yeah. So what I'd love to do is to broaden that so that a lot of people are involved, that a lot of people are either involved in participating in these or wants to know more and be part of a research team. Because I think this is something that is under research, is beginning to be researched more now, but there's so much we can borrow from sports science, so much more from medicine. So that we're just playing better, and it's so much easier.
Yeah, playing better and playing for longer without breaking down as well.
Spot on.
Cool. No, very interesting stuff. I'll be keeping an eye on that for sure, because
right.
I mean, for me, as you were saying before, like the switching between different styles, like part of my day job is, you know, I start the day, you know, doing a classical warm-up, then concert band for an hour, then I do a rock band, then I do a big band, and then I got to play a double or something at the end of the day. So my ambition, you know, it gets really confused. And
well, there are things from there are exercises. If you look at ASPA, the Australian Society of Performing Arts Health, there's these exercises that they've got there from Bronwyn Acumen.
Oh yeah, Bronwyn.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
She talked about, you know, releasing your embouchure with just simple things like this, where you're rubbing down on your muscles of mastication, it's like all through here, and also rubbing under here as well. So there's a whole, it's an amazing source.
Nice, cool. Ness has just made a comment saying Carrie Kaufman.
Great, Ness.
Yoga and saxophone. So
I'll pass that on to Nikki. Yeah, come on, Ness. Thanks, mate.
Cool. I think Nikki tuned out. So
she did.
Yeah.
She's doing practice because she needs to write her lit review for me tomorrow. So
good on her.
No.
Now, speaking of your saxophone class, I just want to, as I said, you're a wonderful performer and composer, of course, and researcher, but of course, you know, we can't not mention your work as an educator. The saxophone class at WAPA has come on in leaps and bounds, and it is certainly probably one of the most it's one of the leading saxophone classes in Australia, and every time I've met students from that class, or it's quite a very nice sense of community amongst the students, and the caliber of graduates from your classes, outstanding. I mean, Aaron Royer, for just one example, of course. Could you tell us a bit about the history of that class? Like, was it something that you created, or was it something you inherited? And if so, how's it sort of grown and developed, and what have you done to sort of make it into what it is today?
Yeah, well, thank you for those comments, Nathan. It's nice to hear that, because you don't know what you do, and you don't know if it's making a difference, and you just hope it is. So look, I really do appreciate those positive comments. It means a lot. So thank you. Look, when I got to WAPA in 2008, there wasn't a saxophone department, saxophone class, saxophone studio, whatever you want to call it. And it's one of the things that when I came back from London initially, it's one of my big aims to try and create a home for the saxophone in Perth, to create a tertiary class, to create a tertiary program, and which will then filter, of course, into then increasing the standard of teaching, standard of composing, the standard of playing, standard of everything. So it was something that I know when I went through was missing. And so it's been a real, it has been a labour of love for me. It's the one thing I've really wanted to do at Perth University is to create this thing. And so when I got to WAPA, I was at UWA for about 8-9 years, and it was kind of going. When I got to WAPA, it was sort of like it felt like it was a more open atmosphere to be able to create this thing. And the great thing, of course, is that Jamie Oles is there as well. So, the students can then have got access to a lot of things that I don't have time to give them, with the jazz and so forth. And so I just put it out there. Look, folks, it's here. I'm full-time. I want to create this thing. And what I wanted to do was to make it so that it was a place where they felt they belonged. Because previous to that, you come to a tertiary institution, they say you're playing saxophone, and go,
yeah,
okay then.
Bit of a stigma back in the day.
A little bit of stigma, yeah. And so I wanted to create that where there was still that healthy rivalry, but where there was a community spirit, where there was a place they could come to, where we would really be able to rally together for the cause of creating something really cool for the saxophone in Perth. So more people started coming through, the quartet started to develop. Then, I started to research more about repertoire, found there was a heap of sextet, octet, nonet, etc., repertoire. So then I started to, do all this stuff, sextet publications and Astute and blah, blah, blah. And and then I realized, hang on, this is the flagship. This is the kind of meeting point. This is the melting point for the saxophone studio. So at that point, I started to think, okay, this is also another point where we can start the versatility, and where we're not hamstrung by doing. And there's some great arrangements of romantic and classical pieces. Not putting them down for a second, but that we can now start to incorporate a whole lot of other things. Get them to improvise in safety. Knowing that they can check out an improvisation, knowing that the other 9, 10, 11, 12 players also are scared out of their brains to improvise, but they're going to give it a crack. So the whole idea of standard's got to be good, all the basics got to be good. It's about music, but it's about community, us community. And from there, creating the mass sax, which then taking that into the community where a lot of saxophone players from wherever around the state can come in and then play with us. And I think we've just slowly built things, and it's really lovely to know that there's sax players out there who love the instrument as much as I do, if not more, who are now teaching it to a really good standard, who are playing it, composing it, arranging it, and creating their own gigs. Jess Herbert and Aaron and Jesse Dean and all these are creating their own possibilities now. Because the other thing I try and impress upon them is, okay, let's look at marketing. Let's look at client liaison. Let's look at your YouTube channel. Let's make sure that you have the EAT portfolio and you're thinking of that, because ain't no one going to give you a job.
Yeah.
Unless you create the portfolio, which is fun. So I suppose, I was the one who built it, and I've got so much more to do. And the great thing is I've now got people like Nikki and Jasmine Eildon and Jasmine Hardy and other people who are now, I treat them as my TAs, and I lean on them for ideas. And it's great because there's this fresh group of ideas coming through. Why don't we do this? Great. Okay. Why don't we do it with the school? Great. Okay. Bring the electronics. Great. Have you heard of this composer? No. Bring it in. And so it's a real sparking atmosphere where, because I don't put myself up as being the oracle. I know everything. You will do as I say. Okay. I know some stuff. Great. And I'm going to teach you to try and teach yourself about that stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I'm not there. You need to, grab that ball and run with it, and I will help you as much as I can.
Nice. In terms of the course there, could you give us like a rough breakdown on what sort of things are covered, and say in an atypical bachelor's degree, like what sort of things would a saxophone student end up doing during the course of their degree?
I think, in a sense, it's fairly typical. You've got your history and your harmony and your oral and so forth. There's a big oral program there, which is very strong Kadai program in it, and it's phenomenal. The wind department has, of course, the wind symphonic band. You've got your central concert practice, and then you've got your woodwind workshop. I also run a saxophone workshop on top of that as well. You've also got, we've also started to get a bit more flexible with adding some electives where you can choose to do things like, I want to know how to run a festival. I want to work with the dancers on creating a new project. I want to know what it is to work a project to then get it to market or get it to the fringe. And so there's a lot more cross-discipline things happening at the moment. There's an oratorio that's going to be premiered in Project Week 2, because we have 4 project weeks a year as well, where different things happen. Like one week you might be able to go and do a whole lot of rhythm stuff with either the jazz or the classical percussionists. I used to run a classical big band, do that every now and then. Right. Every now and then we get sectionals for Broadway shows, and we just run through them, try and get them up to speed. We do doubling workshops as well. So that's kind of the broad part of it. And of course, if you're doing sax, you have to do a sax ensemble. Mm-hmm. For most of it, you're going to do the wind orchestra. Yep. If you're lucky enough that the orchestra is actually doing something with saxophone, then great. Luckily this year there is Romeo and Juliet, so I feel sorry for the tenor player. I haven't told him yet. The tenor graveyard. And a lot of other really interesting, like I mentioned, cross-discipline things. And the composers are always putting on a whole lot of different smaller projects and concerts, and they're always asking me, do you have a sax player that wants to do this? Cool. Do you have 4 players? Who can I call? Who's it? Here's the music, blah, blah, blah. So, at the end of the week, the Whopper guys, they've done a lot. Yeah,
it sounds like it covers such a broad spectrum of things. And again, slightly jealous because, had a lot of those opportunities. It sounds fantastic.
It's very cool.
Now, here's an easy one for you. How would you describe your teaching philosophy?
It kind of is easy. Teach them to teach themselves.
Nice.
That's really what it comes down to, is to expose them to as much as possible, to show them what is possible, to guide them through things, but to question. If I've said try this, they go home. I want them to go home and try it, and if it doesn't work for them, great, but find out what does work for them. Because the more they can start that journey now of firing, the curiosity and inquisitiveness, the better. I'm really happy for students to come in and say, I really want to play this piece this year. Great. Okay, if it fits in what we're trying to do with you this year and where you're trying to be at the end of that year and, in 4 years' time, mm-hmm. Great.
Sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely right. So as much as there's this handbook I give that's about 65 pages and go, this is the Bible, mate. There's a whole lot of flexibility about that, but I want them to realise that they can come to me and ask anything and talk things through, and of course I'll come up with as many answers as I can. But they need to teach themselves.
Yeah. If there was one thing,
Pretty much it.
Oh, cool. If there was one thing you wanted students to take away from their lessons, would you say that was it, to be self-sufficient, or is there probably one other thing or something else you think they, like, literally just one thing? If there's one thing, say a student was a real battler, but there was one thing that you wanted them to take away, what would it be?
It's like, what's that movie, City Slickers? What's the one thing? That's some age, isn't it? Yeah, look, I think it is. It the one thing is being open and curious and inquisitive.
Yep. Cool.
And there's two things. And there's no one answer to any question.
Yep. Perfect.
Except, did you play that wrong? Yes, you did.
Okay, try again. Nice.
That's right. Except do it better.
Cool. No, great. Now, COVID-19, everyone's sick of it, of course, but and it's affected everyone in different shapes and forms. But particularly for musicians, it's not exactly been the most ideal thing to happen for us, of course. How have you sort of adapted and dealt with it? Like, obviously, teaching online and lack of gigs and sort of gigs being postponed. Like, and was there anything that you learnt and care to share in terms of dealing with the current situation?
I'll preface this by saying WA has been very fortunate that we haven't experienced as many lockdowns or as long as the rest of Australia, and for 1 minute, I very much appreciate how fortunate we've been, and my heart really does go out to Sydney and Melbourne for the ongoing roles that you've had to face. Look, I suppose the one thing with all of this is your mental health, and being able to try and maintain your creativity and your balance within yourself through a period that is really tricky, where things are just not normal. We can still be creative even if we're at home. It's harder. I really get that, especially, I was talking to Andy Scott. They've had close to a year lockdown. It's heartbreaking. But just doing that sort of stuff, and also making sure that, people talk about the Zoom drinks, that people have every now and then, and of course the online pub, sensational idea. I love that. Yep. Now that's really cool. But if you're a creative person, then be creative in contact with someone else. And I know we hate Zoom, and whether it be Skype or Zoom, just bloody screen in front of us. I get that, but if that's what we've got, then I think if we're in touch with people, because the thing about music, it's social, and we need people for it, whether it be the audience or just the person we're performing with. And so to try and create opportunities where we can continue to be social, we continue to be interactive, where we continue to be connected in some way, and being patient with yourself, because some days, especially, if you've been locked down for a month, some days you just find it hard to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And that's understandable. So you got to go, look, it's okay. I'm not doing great today. All right. Get that. Don't give yourself a hard time. But what's one thing you can do that you love doing that can try and help you just lift you? If you can get 10% out of yourself that day, if it just means you get up and play something, great. Sometimes I found that if you've got something like a metronome, annoying, and a drone, annoying, but I love them because it's almost like an accountability. So if I sit if I go, okay, I've got the presence of mind, put the metronome on, during lockdown, and you go, okay, I'm going to play these scales, or I'm going to play this piece, I'm going to play these 2/5/1s or something, and the metronome is there. It's like the metronome going, no, don't stop, no, don't stop, do not, you stopped, I'm still going, why have you stopped? So there's this, you can use that, and also I find something like the drone is great because, while I use it for a lot of tuning and so forth, you can then use it as a pedal note or a tonic note to improvise. So you can start creating your own, Gregorian chants sort of idea. Why not? And if you think, oh, that's okay, then record yourself. Why not? Yeah, it doesn't have to end up on YouTube. It's, I know some of just for yourself. So I think trying to keep yourself, slightly creative, trying to keep yourself slightly in touch with people, and give yourself a break, but also put in place a couple of things that help you to keep going. For me, it was sadly, it was a metronome and a drone that you say, okay, it's not giving up, is it? No, all right. And then you get the other one, and you put it on the first two semiquavers and the fourth semiquaver, and then you think, okay, actually no, I'm going to treat one as the fourth semiquaver, so then I have to play a chord, nerd.
Nice.
Anyway.
Now we're very much near the end, so that Vino will very much be very tasty. But a couple of just a quick ones. Hopefully, we'll see how we go. This is a new one I've started asking guests because just in terms of, it's still a very uncertain projection as to what the musical landscape in Australia is going to be like in a post-COVID world. But in terms of the things that you've started to see and whatnot, what sort of things do you think might happen in terms of a change in the landscape for musicians, or what sort of things would you like to have see?
Yeah. There's a big question, isn't it?
Sorry.
No. It's great. It's really good. I think the thing that I'm seeing happen is that firstly there is more online content, which is great, and therefore that ends up having. I think people are then becoming more aware of what more people are doing, which is great. I think the opportunity to do online paid concerts is also really cool, because of course then we're accessing a much potentially bigger audience.
Yep.
And I think that's one real positive that's come through with this. I think also now that things, again, talking from Perth's point of view, where we are so lucky, now that things are opening up more, I find that the public there is more of a thirst, or an increased thirst, or a more obvious thirst for musical things, albeit smaller than they were before. They don't necessarily want quartets, quintets, etc. They want duos. That's fine. We've got to start somewhere. We've got to get the ball rolling, and I think that's good. What I think we need to do then is somehow tap in, and I don't know how to do it, but somehow tap into the community psyche that music is such a part of what we do and who we are, and it's necessary. What really gets my goat is we haven't entered. We're right in the middle of this era where we have to justify our very existence in the arts. And I, like every person listening right here, is entirely sick of that. We should not need to do it. We've got to put every economic argument out there. $11 billion, thank you, Ness, $11 billion of, into the economy. Exports, blah, blah, blah. We should not be having the financial discussion anymore. That's been made. That's been done. It's there. There's no... Go to the Bureau of Stats. See it again if you particularly want, but it's boring. It's a boring argument. Where is Keating when you need him? That's who we need. And I think to change, this is going to sound, but to change the conversation about the way people are talking about the arts. Now, whether that is that we need to continue to put online stuff on so people see it, I don't know. Maybe that is the answer. But it's like one of the first rules of marketing, awareness. We just need to raise the awareness and get people thinking somehow that it's not an add-on. It's part of who we are. And I think in Perth, it's great to see that Wasso's back up again and audiences are back up again. It's great to see that, some of the things that Ben Northey and MSO, it's up again and doing it to a greater realistic extent. It's beautiful seeing that. Somehow maybe we need a statesman. Maybe we need a Paul Keating. Maybe we need another Richard Gill. Someone who'll just stand up and someone who people will listen to. Yeah. Or maybe we just need to continue to stand up and keep saying it. Sorry, soapbox. There it was.
No. It's all good. All right, something a bit lighter to finish up.
Hey!
If you had 10 minutes of practice, what would it be? What would it be and why?
Okay. That's easy, actually.
Okay.
Because most days I only get 10 minutes of practice. Shh. You can edit that one out. Yeah. Okay. That's what I always do is, and this harkens back to the drills, if you will, from Dr. Murphy and Dr. Russo, is I will always spend 30 seconds on just the mouthpiece and the tuner, sit on the notes, the D, G, A, or C. And I'll make sure not only, am I getting that note, but I'll do the whole, can you get it softer than the vented air conditioning and still keep it in tune kind of thing. Mouthpiece, gooseneck, try and get that ear crunching resonance that particularly on alto, I just love that feeling because that you're directing things really, really well. You're also, building up step by step your brain, all of the muscles around here, you're doing it gradually, and your air. And then I'll put the drone on and just check my tuning and do, check. I won't use the tuner necessarily, just according to the drone, that's the tonic, or that's the fifth, or that's the second, and start playing around the range to make sure that my range is good, my air is good, checking my fingers, and always hitting the extremes, the bottom and the top, checking my voicing. And by that point, that could be 2 hours really.
Yeah, for sure.
But right there, that's 10 minutes that I know the basics of my air and my sound and my muscles, and what it's doing is recalling as much as I can about playing again. But I think the the two things that always we need to be looking at are tone and your air.
Yep. And that also sets you up for the day as well. Yep. And
you can improvise as well if you're bored.
Yeah. But there's always plenty to do, that's for sure. Now, just a quick question from the gallery. The question about the new sax stand harness thing. Where can we find out information on that one?
Thanks, Ness. Right now, keep bugging me because I'm in touch with John Mackey, who's also doing his PhD with me, funnily enough. And I'm not sure where it's at. I know it's gone to a manufacturer.
Yep.
I don't know where it's at there, so please bug me and I'll find out more information.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Well, on that note, Dr. Stiles, Matt, thank you very much for your time. I know it was a long session. These always are for some reason, but
great.
It's fantastic because we get so much out of everything, and yours is no exception, of course. Absolute pleasure to chat and you pick your brains and share your insights. And
anytime. Yeah.
Well, hopefully face to face sometime soon.
Hey, that'd be nice, Dr. Henshaw.
Oh, it would be quite a novel idea.
Hey. Got to bring your funny hat over as well, mate.
I had to hand it back.
Oh, buy one. They're great fun. They're great fun at parties.
All right, perfect. Yeah. All right, but anyway, I won't keep any longer, but thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And thanks for everyone tuning in, and see you next time.
Good on you, Nathan. Thanks, mate.
Cheers. Thanks.
See ya.